It has been identified that a critical factor for West Africa's disappearing biodiversity is lack of a platform for cross-border information exchange across diverse stakeholders like civil society organizations, government representatives, development partners, private sector to share information and exchange ideas and help in developing common strategies and policies for biodiversity in the sub-region. At the current rate of biodiversity loss and habitat degradation in the West African sub-region, the region's stock of environmental resources is expected to diminish by over half within the coming decade. The consequence of such a large-scale loss of biodiversity is dire, as it will ultimately affect the capacity for economic development, social advancement, as well as exacerbate climate change. Little wonder why the Nigerian Conservation Foundation (NCF), which is the Nigerian partner of the BirdLife International, a global partnership of NGOs, is striving to conserve birds, their habitats, and global biodiversity, working with people towards the sustainable use of natural resources. Hence, the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, acting on behalf of BirdLife partners from West Africa, is collaborating with ECOWAS. It has organized a 2-day workshop for CSOs, ECOWAS, and key development partners in Abuja. Among activities that held at the 2-day workshop were paper presentations with practical recommendations by development partners from the ECOWAS, FAO, SOS Forests, World Bank, among others.
Sell wood from this forest. Don't kill animals. Don't poach. They're all good. But what of an alternative source? Do you have plans for them? That's why most policies, they don't function, they don't work. Because government does not make an alternative livelihood or create an alternative livelihood for them. So if you remove them, or dissuade them from getting something from their forest, you have to create an alternative. And that's what, next slide. Hello? Next slide. So what UNESCO is preaching is alternative livelihood. And we call it green economy in biosphere reserves. If you enact policies that communities should not benefit from the environment, or they should have limited access to the environment, there is need to create alternative livelihoods. If you create alternative livelihoods, you remove their eyes or you reduce the pressure on the forest system, on the ecosystem. But if you don't do that, they will still revert back to what they are doing in the environment. So what we are preaching in UNESCO is the introduction of green economy in biosphere reserve. So our MAP program is promoting green economy in biosphere reserve. Because there is need to continue to demonstrate to local communities that biodiversity is intimately linked to their very existence. You cannot just tell them they should move away from the forest system, but you should let them know that it is intimately linked to their very existence. So are there things you can do that they should survive there as well as take care of the environment? So the green economy we are preaching is a combination of allowing communities to benefit from the environment, at the same time conserving the environment, rather than trying to remove them completely from the environment. So there is need to build the capacity and provide support to the local communities to enable them undertake biodiversity commercial enterprise that generates profits while at the same time contributes to biodiversity and natural resource management, sustainable development through poverty eradication. So there is need to create a program that will enable local communities generate profit through alternative livelihoods and at the same time contribute to biodiversity management. So it's a combination. So a well-developed and managed biodiversity business will also help alleviate the pressure on biodiversity. So when you have this on ground, it will alleviate the pressure on your ecosystem. Next slide. So that's exactly the strategy we called green economy in biosphere reserve. To enable local communities exist in and within their environment, take out something from the environment, at the same time conserve the environment. So the objective of our green economy in biosphere reserve project or program is to diversify economy through improved and alternative biodiversity related livelihoods. So there's need for livelihoods, not only policy. When you create policy, you also create livelihoods so that the local communities can benefit from the environment as well as conserve the environment at the same time. Think of having apiculture, mushroom farming, snail rearing, fishing, grass cutter farming, oil palm production, all sorts of things, even honey production. By so doing, we did it so when you do this, there is reduction in pressure on forests. As a result of fuel extraction, people will depend less on the forest system, and you build the capacity of the local communities to ensure sustainability. Once they start making profits from their businesses, you are building their capacity to also conserve the environment. So let me give you an example of what we did in Omo Biosphere Reserve in Ijebu-Ode and Bia Biosphere Reserve project beneficiaries. If you go to Omo between Ijebu-Ode and Lagos, you see a lot of lorries carrying logs of wood. I don't know whether you have noticed it. Carrying logs of wood. Then along the road, you see people selling charcoal. You see other people selling monkeys, wildlife, birds, anything they are getting from the forest. And they have policies that they should not do that, but they have to survive. So what we did was to introduce alternative livelihoods that will remove their eyes from forest resources to these alternative livelihoods. And when they do that, the pressure on the ecosystem is reduced. So we introduce fish farming, snail rearing, mushroom production, and grass cutter. Do you know, because of one grass cutter, they can burn a whole up to 10 hectares. At times they set the forest ablaze to look for grass cutters. They set the forest ablaze to look for snail. They poison, they use chemicals to go and put on a stream to kill fish. Then the mushroom, you know, they even pick the poisonous ones mistakenly. So these are things they are doing. But why don't you support them to domesticate this at the back of their houses so that they don't destroy the forest? It's not only using policy. You can do a practical thing like this. So we just saw a water body and we created a fish farm. So that stopped using chemicals to kill fish. Remember, it's linked to the health of the family, of the community. The snail rearing, we just created boxes and gave each family about 50 snails. So the tendency of going to set the forest ablaze to get snails was reduced. Same with grass cutter. It's a delicacy in that place. But if you have a grass cutter farm at the back of the houses, just give each family about a family of 4 females and 1 male. They will start rearing grass cutters. They will no longer go to burn the bush to look for grass cutter. So I'm just saying that policies, they're very good, but we should do practical things that will enforce those policies.
Les ONG qui mènent ces actions sur le terrain peuvent bénéficier du soutien de l'UNESCO à travers son programme MAP. Parce que ici, pour la conservation de la biodiversité, l'homme et ses activités sont considérés comme un référentiel. Donc on ne peut préserver l'environnement sans toutefois tenir compte des activités de l'homme. Alors il y a déjà des ONG comme le nôtre qui mènent déjà des actions sur le terrain, mais par manque de moyens, ces actions-là n'ont pas d'impact. Alors comment l'UNESCO peut venir en aide à ces ONG? Par quel mécanisme? Merci.
You mentioned that there is a wide gap between policy and practice, which I perfectly agree with you. And I know that with the man and biosphere concept, one of the priorities is to mainstream the biosphere reserve concept into planning, right from the national level to the local level. So, number one, I want to know which institution in Nigeria is hosting the Man and Biosphere program. And then number two, if you can also share your thoughts on how you think we can effectively mainstream the concept into development at all levels, at the local, at the district, state, national level. Thank you.
Okay, please don't forget if you have any questions for the World Bank presentation as well. We had it this session. So, any more? Oh, now I've opened
I think if we look at the presentation from the UNESCO representative, I think he emphasized that there are actually fewer number of biosphere reserve in West Africa. And I would like to say that some of these biosphere reserves are actually sites for that are important for birds and biodiversity. So some of these sites are actually key to BirdLife International. So I'm actually seeing quite a number of synergies between the work that UNESCO is doing and what our BirdLife partners are doing. For example, I will not underscore what you've already said about local communities, because that is again the interest of our BirdLife partners across West Africa. But I would like to bring to your attention the issue of creating the biosphere reserves, especially in Lake Chad or possibly maybe beyond in other regions. Because if you look at my presentation, Dr. Amtari, I also mentioned the fact that in our strategy, we are actually looking towards increasing the number of important bird areas in West Africa. So the issue is, how can we be able to use this platform to be able to come together? Because not only are we looking at the same biodiversity, the same areas, we are dealing with the same communities. So at the end of the day, obviously, there may be need, like the gentleman from World Bank says, who will approach the other for us to be able to start the conversation going. And even the last but not least, the issue of the transboundary reserves. That's again another priority for the BirdLife partners, to be able to make sure that in the next 10 years, we actually see an opportunity for biodiversity, for transboundary reserve. Last but not least, I think a comment on the presentation that was made by the World Bank representative. Again, some synergies as well, especially with regards to the aspects of climate change, as well as the issues on the coastal areas that you talked about. Because obviously as BirdLife now, we are involved, like I said, we are involved in the marine programs, and especially of key interest to us is the role that your regional observatory can actually play and consolidate or maybe improve, provide more data for the BirdLife partnership to be able to move forward in terms of the work that they are doing. Similarly, on our side, with the work that we are already doing in the establishment and identifying of marine IBAs, how can we actually be able to share that information? Thank you very much.
The details of the presentation made by Mr. Apokoje to enable me make the question. In 2010, there was the deep water oil spill, deep water oil, Nigeria and other coastal areas. Now, most of the presentations haven't looked at a way to create a synergy between the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of Guinea. It would be important to perhaps influence the American government to look at a way to either make compensations. I don't know how possible that would be, because they did to the EU, but not much has been discussed with Africa. There's been research done on the effect of those spills in Europe, but not, in this part of the world. So I don't know how this conference going forward would look at, addressing that issue.
Or whoever to compensate the other party. That's the job of UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program. And at that level, it is the job of African Union to make a case for that. ECOWAS cannot even do it. It's at that African level, what's it called? AU, African Union, at their level to make a case for the Gulf of Guinea and to make a case for compensation. Then UNEP will be requested to do a thorough research, and their report is what they will use to calculate whatever they want to calculate and make the appropriate compensation. If you remember, UNEP just finished about a few years ago in Niger Delta, even though they don't want nothing to materialize. But they have done a thorough job in Niger Delta. With UNEP report, we are supposed to do a lot of things in Niger Delta. But if you look closely, watch closely, you find that the report is still not made open. I hope you know, it's not made open. So it's at the level of African Union to UN, and UN will mandate UNEP to do a thorough research, and the report of UNEP will now be the basis for dialogue and compensation. But if we want to do it at a very low level of like ECOWAS, it will be difficult.
So because I've actually made some requests, to actually understand what UNEP has done about it.
Yeah.
There's been no push to that.
I don't know to what extent, but I know within the UN system, it is UNEP report that the UN will consider at that level, because it's involving a lot of things. But whoever makes that request should be from African Union, or at least ECOWAS. But UNEP report is what they are waiting for. That's the only major agency that can do that kind of international listen. Then fewer members of Africa. Okay, madam, thank you. In Lake Chad, when we are looking at the Biopath project, we invited a lot of organizations to a workshop. BirdLife, Nigeria, NCF, they were all there. And we have their list in our database. Now we are just starting, negotiating with the communities. You know, the problem of Lake Chad is that to enter into the community is difficult. We are still going at the periphery. We went to Yobe, but you cannot enter because of security issues. So when there is an improvement in the security challenges we are having now, all those NGOs we identified that will be involved will be invited to do one or two things, and I'm sure that's the time BirdLife, NCF will come, because we invited them for our own meeting. That's the time they will come, because we want to collaborate with as many people as possible. If you go to fauna and flora, birds, that's the, what they call them? They have avians or what? We know they exist, and we need to know their population, their type, everything. When you do, we call it biodiversity index in the natural forest, you have to tell us about the flora and the fauna, their characters, everything. So definitely we are going to involve everybody. Sustainability program. Yes, most times when donors pull out, that's the end of the project. So the exit strategy, what we did was to make sure that each fish farmer, snail farmer, mushroom farmer, and grass cutter farmer, we make sure that they formed associations, strong cooperative associations, with their bank and everything registered. So we make sure that they have all those things in place. We equip them to make sure that these cooperatives are functional, so that at the end of the project, when we will leave the project, that's the donor, when we exit, they would have made enough money. They would have made enough money, and they have a sound management with a sound structure in place to continue with that project. And we do not leave them. What we did also was to hand over to a government agency that has mandate for forest conservation. That's FRIN, Forest Research of Nigeria, to please keep on supporting the community. Even though we, UNESCO, have withdrawn our funding, but the Forest Research of Nigeria was officially handed over this project to keep on supporting the communities. But the community members themselves, we make sure we build them into strong cooperative societies with sound management practices, and enough money for them they have made from their business to make sure that they sustain this project. Because most times it's the problem of not having money and not having good management structure that will now bring problem, and that's the end of it. But if there is a good structure on ground and with government support, I think it will continue for a long time. And we are not leaving them alone. Once in a while, we still go and see what they are doing. The issue of support of NGOs, I just said it, in Omo Biosphere Reserve, we don't have the capacity to implement activities in the field. That's the UN. No UN agency implements in the field. We just make sure that everything is in order. We now look for a local agency or a local institution or a government agency that can do it. Because by so doing, the UN agencies, their job is to support government and build the capacity of the local people, not to bring money and also implement. So while we are there, we work with a lot of local NGOs, especially youth and women NGOs that help to implement this in the field. Most of them are on contracts. We have a lot of NGOs with contracts, including, for instance, a microfinance bank to teach them how to make savings and rotate your profit. So we do not do projects ourselves. We use a lot of NGOs. The one of Lake Chad, so many of them, up to 20 NGOs will be used in Lake Chad region. Once there is improvement in the security challenges we're having, we'll bring them and give contracts and we'll just supervise. Our own job is to monitor and supervise. I'm sure the World Bank does it too. We don't implement actually the field, but we provide enabling environment for it. Is there anyone I've left not touch? I think I've said something on it. My colleague will complete it.
So activities are demanded by the government. So we're not going to come and impose into your space. So if your government, so it's your project basically. So and one thing I've seen, I think I'll remove my World Bank cap, and I've seen that most countries in Africa keep on asking. They are never sustainable. They never have enough. When will we stop asking? So that's the big. So when I say 25 years, that's a long time for you to ask, and you are still asking for money. so there's supposed to be a time that you need to stop asking and start generating income. And so we try and make sure that it's your project, number one. Number two, your communities have to own it. So we do stakeholders. So for instance, you look at the top and look at the bottom. I work in Sierra Leone and Cameroon. I know there are quite a few blips and the Ebola issue and all that. But at some point, I notice in these countries, they are massively rich. Freetown was built by the Chinese. I was there when the Chinese were building the roads in Freetown. They took iron ore. We knew about it. So how can we now leverage on our resources to be sustainable? We have the power. So we want to work with governments that know their ability, they have the ability to actually work with us and push us back. And so quite a few of us in developing partners encourage you to own your projects, take advantage of the policies on ground, and at some point start making money out of it. And quite a few of the countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia have natural resources. We have the RED project in Liberia. How can you start making money out of it? So I think the most important thing is that when the communities start deriving income, that is the way forward to be sustainable. And we also feel bad when we see there's a follow-up project. We feel that we tend not to give you funds again, because the funds are limited and there are other countries are requesting for them. So we feel that how can we encourage? That means either our project is a failure. If we have not, the success factor is that the project has been able to, the government has been able to take over the project and run with it. So sometimes it might be a success, to us it's a failure, because you have not taken the money and run with it. And even worse off when we even give loans, because other UN agencies actually give grants, we give loans. So you pay, your children pay for that money. So that is very painful as an African. So please factor that in as you give projects. So, but we are looking for various ways, and we always work with you to make sure that you own the project and take it over. We expect you to take it over and run with it. In the other question about synergy and climate change from Dr. Tandy, we do have, luckily you are based in Dakar, the regional observatory is in Dakar. And so we do have colleagues in Dakar that we definitely want to work with you. So the regional observatory is in Dakar. We are funding it at this moment. We will be excited. I can give you the contacts of the people in Dakar you can reach out to and be able to factor in the kind of data you can collect. I don't know the details because I'm not working on it now. But also it will be good to actually see a synergy. What kind of data have you collected to be able to see that we're not duplicating efforts and reach a synergy? And there are ways of collaboration. We will be so excited to do that. Because regional observatory is for the whole of the coastline. So all the countries on the coastline, and we're looking forward to getting more data. They were only focused on Senegal, but now we want to expand them to the whole of the West African coastline. So I think for oil spill, and I was listening to Michael's, because in my previous life I used to do lots of work on oil spill. So I actually looked at the cost of the impact of oil spill on the Niger Delta and the cost of oil spill. And I kind of laugh because we know the compensation rates of oil spill are very minute. So if you can't even pay compensation to yourselves, you expect foreign countries to pay to you, they would never. So like you can see a tree, maybe a mango tree is like 10 kobo. The rates are extremely low. And we've not been able to make a case. But also for such a thing to happen, I also support my colleague from UNESCO. It needs to be at the regional level, but also the countries need to also come out and request for it. We are still fighting for the one on slavery. That is kind of, and now we want to go to what happened in America, crossing the ocean. I would say most countries, most governments of the day would not look at it. But saying that, one of the things we also, and I'm also talking to my colleagues here, you have to understand the way the countries work. So different countries work in different ways. And one of the things is that if you want your projects to have traction, you have to work with the government and the people. And so we tend to be apolitical, but you have to understand the, and also be able to put a monetary value. So those people don't understand our jargon, sorry to say. They don't understand when you're talking about migratory birds, movement, livelihoods, forest and all that. And moreover, they are not the stakeholders. They don't live in the communities. They live in places like Abuja, Freetown, and all that. They live in the cities. So they don't understand what the poor man is going through. So the only way you can actually assist them is to put a monetary value and look at what they will lose as a result of not servicing these ecosystems, which are extremely important to them too. So for instance, if a rich man wants to drink orange, fresh orange, he likes fresh orange, but he doesn't know how it's gotten. But you tell him that whatever he's doing, he doesn't put money, that fresh orange will not be, he will be drinking the one from sugar and all that. He will think you're putting a value to it. So I think I will stop there, please. Thank you.
There's a major effect. So when Tandy is talking about preventing bycatch of seabirds, then some of the targets are not just trawlers registered within West African countries, some of them are those coming over, and then pollution and some of the others. But these are big questions to look at. The other issue, which I think is more immediate and more to the subject of this workshop we're having, is really what are the practicalities of how can we engage. So we've listened very closely to what the development partners are doing and have seen clearly what the synergies are with our own work. And when we come back from lunch, it will be the reverse. They will listen to what we are doing in our countries and also grab more of the synergies that happen. Now, what happened next? So we've started to explore that by some of the questions about how do NGOs feature in the work of UNESCO, World Bank, FAO, WABIC, and so on. And we can delve more closely into that do they have any specific mechanism through which either individual national NGOs in our own countries or as a network of NGOs which spans multi-countries can hook on and collaborate more with them. So I think let's take these thoughts, maybe discuss them over lunch, but know that we'll chew them a bit more during the course of the workshop. So thank you very much. I can start with my own. Maybe if I can ask Dr. Fongweban to tell us a little bit about some of the forest projects that their office is directly engaged in, and whether any of them are across West Africa or whether most of it is in the office here is just Nigeria based. No, maybe we'll take questions, then you can. FAO of the United Nations. So I'll hand over the mic for him to first introduce himself and then go into the presentation. Sir.
I am Dr. John von Weban, working with the FAO. I'm a forester, I'm a forest officer, and so I'm specialized more or less in the forestry sector. However, the FAO works in what we call the agricultural sectors. And these agricultural sectors include the agriculture itself, forestry, fisheries, and livestock. So when we are talking about biodiversity within FAO, there are many players in FAO that are concerned with this. Foresters will be concerned more with the forestry and wildlife aspects of biodiversity. The others will be concerned with fisheries and marine biodiversity and many other things. However, the focus in the FAO, whatever area, whatever sector of biodiversity you are concerned with, it's all geared towards food security, because that's really the mandate of FAO. And so I have a few slides. I don't think there will be time for any details, but what I want to show in the slides is just to give a historical trend about what FAO has been doing in biodiversity. We can't go into details here, but there are documents. So most of what I will show there's no message apart from pictures that are all references of documents that have been produced by FAO, which are available. They are available free on our website for anybody. Part of the history of FAO's work in biodiversity, which started in the 1950s. FAO was created around 1946, and the biodiversity work goes as far as the 50s, and most of what you have there are little information about what was done then, and I wouldn't go into such details. Then there was a landmark in the 70s, 83, 1995, 2001, 2002. It continues in the next slide, and it goes right to the present 2018. I will say that at the end, there's a document which to me is what, if somebody would ask me, I would say, okay, you can look at this document of 2018 talking about biodiversity, mainstreaming, and many other things. That shows some of the, say, success stories or examples of what we have done in many areas and in different countries. As I said, biodiversity in FAO is linked to food security and agriculture. And what you have there are just some references of documents that have been produced by FAO, are all free. The biodiversity for food and agriculture, and sustainable diets. In fact, we formerly were always talking about agriculture and food, but now the most concern is not just to have the food, but to have the quality food, good quality food. And so dieting is very important. The mix of food is very important. So what I have there are all documents, as I'm saying. I have the PDFs of these documents. For anybody who wants to really read, you can have them free. Yes, go ahead. Now, one key area in the FAO is to address the issues of the youth. And we think that in conservation, in biodiversity conservation, youth should really be educated, and capacity building is one of what we do. And that guide is it's quite a big document that talks about biodiversity in different areas and in different sectors. And for the youths, we thought that could be a very good pedagogic document for them to go through. It can be used at different levels, probably in academia and things like that, to raise awareness on conservation and many other things. Again, the document is available. In the forestry sector, where I particularly work, we have been working on this forest resource assessment since the 50s. Most countries know that in the forest sector we publish this after every 5 years, the states of the forest. Now, these global resources contain, one section of these global resources contain what we call the forest biodiversity. So there's a big sector there that if you go there, once we carry out inventories, we then come out with results in terms of species diversity, in terms of species abundance, and we're able to see which are some of the species that are already endangered. So we go back to the CITES book records, and then we try to tie them with the results we have to say these are the species that are endangered. So again, those documents are available. In the proper area of agriculture, you must have heard about climate smart agriculture. Now, at the wake of climate change, FAO had also thought about changing their approaches, because with climate change, there are future impacts on the environment, on us as humans, on plants, on animals, and many other things. So in that case, you have to go through another approach where you need to have the sustainable agricultural systems. Some of the crops, some of the plants might not be able to stand the test of climate in the future. So we need to think about those that might be better adapted in the future. And to do this, we have to tap into the safety net of the agro biodiversity species and even the plant or the tree biodiversity species in the forest. So that you have just a section of the document, which is, in fact, is a big document about the climate smart source book, which has different sections. This one is talking about, especially about genetic resources, and you will teach me better when we talk of biodiversity. You have different stages at the genetic level, the species level, and the landscape or ecosystem level. So we're also looking at the genetic level, even the seeds. How will the seeds, which will be the most adapted seeds tomorrow? And in fact, there are gene banks and things like that that have to see how to preserve some of these species for the future. Well, this again, about talking about diets and commodities, it's just talking about the agro diversity of crops, food crops. Again, in the face of climate change, we need to also diversify the type of crops we have, because some of them that are good today, rice variety today might not withstand climate tomorrow. So we need to think about others that will substitute those things. So we are also very interested in looking at the state of the commodities. Now, there is in the management, probably conservation, the issues of conflicts, which I'm not an expert in that. And sometimes you have issues like conflicts between people and the elephants. You know, they are very animals. You also have conflicts with the lions. You have conflicts with many other type of things for resources. So there are some documents that we've written with some experience on how to manage these conflicts. I believe there are even conflicts domestically now that we know with the cattle. You know, you have the cattle and the farmers are having all these problems. They are still linked, in effect, to the fact that with the climate change, there are changes in the ecosystems, like what we just found in Nigeria in the land use change analysis that I'm doing in a project, that the ecosystem that we used to call the Guinea, the Sahel, and the Sudan, now you really don't have anything like that. Everything is storm, and probably that's why you have these problems now. The cattle that used to be in the northern zone, that's the main zone, they don't have anything to eat, so they are forced naturally to move, and this is probably causing conflict, which is a natural thing, but sometimes we can interpret it humanly. So these are some of the things which you know better how to handle, how to manage some of those things. But we also have to say in it. Could you? Now, at the level of species levels, at the level of landscape levels, we are concerned with protected areas, and in our global forest resource assessment, one of the areas of sustainability that will, as an indicator of sustainability, is what is the percentage of forest or land in the country that is reserved as protected areas and things like that. So those things are taken into account. I also think that document, I've not read that, but I think that document has a lot, in fact, linking protected areas and food security, which is something I think in terms of participatory management that could be very useful to make the population know that probably you don't have a protected area for policing purposes, but there are other things that we can manage better within a protected area in terms of food, because the people are looking for food, but there are ways that we could do that sustainably. Let's go ahead, please. Genetic level documents, those are just documents on the status of the genetic resources. I think it's one key area in conservation, biodiversity conservation, or the genetic resources. So you need to conserve the best genetics or genomes for tomorrow. And so those, as I said, those are all documents that we have, references that we have. So go ahead. Now, this is a document which I think I've printed a copy here. I also have it on PDF, which has some sort of, it's a document that was produced this year by FAO. It has examples of biodiversity success stories all over the world that we've worked, and in different sectors. So this is a document that if somebody wanted to read, I would say start here, because you have most of what the other documents have summarized here. So you will see a lot of good studies. They are not only in Africa, they are not only, probably you have this for West Africa, but they are not only in West Africa. There are West African countries with good examples inside that document, but there are other countries in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, and everywhere that could be useful. The other document, again, is not very big, and I also have here is this issue of biodiversity mainstreaming platform. It's another thing, because we don't think that in any country we have to bring new laws or things like that. We think that we can always mainstream the biodiversity issues into the other policies. Again, it's a very recent document which could be very useful. Now I talked about wildlife, the wildlife sector, the biodiversity in the area of wildlife. We have just basically with all the type of management strategies for wildlife. and so on. There again, I had already talked about this issue of wildlife being affected by climate change. I talked of the cattle, but the other species, animals, reptiles, amphibians, their ecosystems are also affected by the climate change. And within FAO and our headquarters, we have some bodies, some organizations that are working within FAO within the area of biodiversity. And 3 of those areas are there. They are all based in Rome. And I would say that for this workshop, somebody from Rome and from our Department of Biodiversity and Climate Change would have probably been a good person to make a presentation here. And I got most of this information from their website. If you just get into that department, you can get all the documents that you have. But as I said, I've downloaded some of them. And for your interest, if you need them, I can always give them, because our aim is to build capacity and also to disseminate all the documentation, the things that we have. I was also surprised because I didn't know there was a rich documentation at that level. So these documents are to be used in the field, and they are not just supposed to be kept there. Thank you for the time.
I can start with my own. Maybe if I can ask Dr. Fongweban to tell us a little bit about some of the forest projects that their office is directly engaged in, and whether any of them are across West Africa, or whether most of it is in the office here is just Nigeria based. No, maybe we'll take questions, then you can come back.
Yes, with on 3 points where I am seeing some synergies with what the BirdLife Partnership does. You mentioned biodiversity and youth. Don't know whether you were in the morning session, but the BirdLife partners are actually very much involved in local, excuse me, local engagement and in empowerment programs that are actually focusing on environmental education and citizen science. So I would want to find out from you whether there are actually any projects within this West Africa where there could be synergy with your office, or where the BirdLife partners could actually be involved. The second one is regards the conflicts between people and lions. I'm sure you've probably heard that in some of the countries, communities actually poison carcasses that at the end of the day actually kill the lions, inadvertently so, kill the lions. And then, of course, at the end of the day, the vultures will actually feed on those carcasses of the lions. And then, hence, we now have a serious decline in the vulture population in Africa. So I'm just wondering whether there are actually any potential areas of collaboration, again, between your office and the BirdLife partners. Last but not least is the one on the wildlife in a changing climate. Of course, we do have most of our IBAs and KBAs that are actually in the climate-challenged areas. And how can we be able to find, again, areas of collaboration? Thank you.
I said, I'm not an expert in this area, so probably the question you're asking you know better than I do. It was probably easier for me to get the information and do a presentation, but I might not be an expert in the areas of animal conflict. This because it involves a lot of people. But I know that there are a lot of problems where, I mean, communities do a number of things that affect the animals and then affect the whole chain. But I can't really, we don't really have a project that is focused on this area. But we do know that there are some of those conflicts that exist. I can still check, as I said, I can check in the final document that I showed to see some of the what is contained there. I will share that with you, and I'll probably have to learn better there. We don't also have a project that is typically youth and biodiversity, but we have projects where you have youths in food security and so on. So there is a good link there. So so for me, I see globally the synergy in terms of biodiversity and food security, because when we are working on the forestry usually, now that we're working with climate change, we usually sample every tree species, and when doing the inventory, like the one I've been doing in Nigeria, where I've been supervising this project, we also work with the communities. We try to understand what the communities get from the forest in terms of those species. So they get a number of things from the forest, which are in terms of food, in terms of protein, in terms of non-timber forest products, and so on. So during the inventory, we analyze those things. And that's part of what we report as biodiversity. Now, when we do the analysis and we do this abundance analysis, relative abundance analysis, we realize that some of what they are talking about are depleted. Then we know that we need some prescriptions in the context of forestry. It will be some of silvicultural prescriptions that can be put in place in order to probably regenerate these species. And this is probably part of what our climate smart agriculture embodies, most of these aspects. Now, we have to work with the communities. We need the food. We also need the forest and the animals in the forest. We want to get the food within a stable, a stable land size, because before you could go, the forest saved as a safety net, you could get more of the land, but now we have to stabilize. So working towards that stabilization, we are able to prescribe what the population can do. And so within the climate smart agriculture, we have a number of strategies, a number of measures that can be used to reduce more impact in the forest, more impact in a protected area, and things like that. So I think it's when we are looking at biodiversity, we are saying that the population that affects the forest are the same people that can manage the forest. The management will not be in the forest in the terms of conservation, but it will be out in the buffers. So we have a lot of things in the climate smart agriculture that if you read, you will see a lot of it, and they are tied with conservation and biodiversity. For West Africa, for your question, we have some projects in West Africa. One of the projects in West Africa is you probably know the Futajalon project in the watershed, which there are a number of countries. I think they also include the countries in the Mano River area and so on. And this is it is an integrated natural resource management project. So the intention is to protect the watershed, the Futajalon watershed that supplies most of the watershed in West Africa. And so this is one of the areas, the projects that we have there. The other thing is we have, as I've said, our climate RED Plus program. And this RED Plus program is, actually, the RED is to reduce deforestation, forest degradation, and in fact encourage sustainable management and conservation. So you have the RED and then the Plus, which has more things than the RED. I always tell people, because the Plus is where you have the sustainable management, the conservation, and the enrichment, planting, and so on. This conservation is the biodiversity conservation that we are talking about. In fact, there is normally, when the REDD+ program came as a climate change mechanism for mitigation, we normally we have documents that have been linking what the CBD, the Convention for Biodiversity, is doing and what the UNFCCC are doing. These are international conventions, and I think once you're practicing, when you're doing REDD+, there's a lot of synergies with the biodiversity conservation, and one of the areas in the REDD+ is what we call the safeguards, and this safeguards information systems is all about biodiversity conservation. Now, if you were looking for carbon, then you can plant a few species that have high density wood. But that is not what it's supposed to be. That is not what's supposed to be. If there are any practices that will reduce the initial biodiversity of that environment, then that is deforestation. So, in effect, the safeguards can't take into account the fact that you cannot destroy the existing species in an area to plant denser species for anything. Those are where the synergies, where it ties with, is it the Aki? We actually have documents that show how these are coherent. And in fact, if you have to have an impact in the REDD programs, you need to include the biodiversity aspects of it. That's where you get the more impact. So we'll say beyond, sometimes we use this phrase, beyond carbon, because the concept behind the climate mitigation in terms of CO2 is not to get more carbon into the atmosphere. But we say that we have to go beyond that. We have to go beyond that to say we don't only want to plant those species that will sequester a lot of carbon, but we also want to take into account the biodiversity that exists in the ecosystem. If you destroy the existing ecosystem, then that is a problem. So that's why protected areas is part of the REDD+ within that plus in terms of conservation. So there's a lot of synergies there. To me, like a forester, it's just normal. Any person who's a forester, you look at the concept of REDD, you know that it's just forestry in another format. And I am not saying that it's foresters or something like that, but I knew that as a forester, you're closest to nature than maybe some of the people. And most of the things that we're doing in forestry, one of the rules is conservation. So, but the REDD+ program that we have usually carry out inventories now, and the inventories we get, the results we present the results by species, and we also present this diversity of species. What we are doing, because it's a vast, countries are not able to do these inventories. We've adopted an ecosystem approach to sampling. So we do sampling, and we are able to get by ecological zones a number of diversity indices, and also the carbon and the biomass information.
Merci. Alors, je me présente, même si nous sommes déjà présentés. Je suis Dr Lozo Romeo Nguessan, enseignant-chercheur à l'université Félix Houphouët-Boigny, chargé des projets depuis l'année dernière à SOS Forêt, que je représente ici. Je ne peux commencer sans toutefois vous transmettre les salutations chaleureuses du président Wadja Mathieu. Alors, donc, il me charge de vous transmettre ces salutations. Bien. Cette présentation va se faire selon le plan suivant. Après le contexte et la création de l'ONG, nous allons montrer les activités de SOS Forêt au plan national et aussi au plan régional. Et Nous terminerons par la présentation du plan stratégique 2017-2018. Ok, merci. Bien, alors ici il faut dire que la Côte d'Ivoire est un pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest qui regorge une certaine diversité biologique très riche à travers la création d'un réseau d'aires protégées représentatifs de tous les biotopes. Donc, nous avons 8 parcs nationaux, 5 réserves, plus de 200 forêts classées, 6 sites Ramsar, 14 IBA, un réseau de lagunes sur plus de 300 km et un réseau hydrographique très dense. Next. Okay. Alors, l'estimation de la biodiversité terrestre au plan terrestre et aquatique, nous avons, concernant les végétaux, plus de 5000 espèces constituées d'algues, de protozoaires et ainsi de suite. Et au niveau des animaux, plus de 9000 espèces. Et concernant l'écosystème, nous avons l'écosystème terrestre, donc diverses forêts et savanes. Au niveau de l'écosystème aquatique, donc un milieu marin riche, lagunaire, les milieux fluviaux et lacustres. Next slide. Malgré la mise en place de ces structures chargées de protéger ces ressources et assurer un environnement humain durable, le cadre de vie et la diversité biologique n'ont cessé de se dégrader pour atteindre des proportions alarmantes aujourd'hui. Donc, le rythme moyen actuel de réduction du couvert forestier est d'environ 200 000 à 250 000 hectares par an. Et il faut dire que cela a commencé depuis longtemps, depuis les années 90 à aujourd'hui pour s'amplifier. Cela peut s'expliquer par certaines menaces que sont l'agriculture extensive, dont vous le savez bien que la Côte d'Ivoire est un pays agricole, et l'exploitation abusive des aires protégées par les communautés environnantes, l'exploitation forestière, le braconnage, l'orpaillage et l'activité minière qui est en plein essor en Côte d'Ivoire et aussi dans les pays de la sous-région. Donc, quelques images. Next. Next. Ceci a incité la naissance d'une conscience environnementale chez les universitaires ivoiriens spécialistes de la science de la nature, qui va aboutir à la création de l'ONG SOS Forêt le 16 mars 1996 pour la gestion durable de la biodiversité et la promotion de l'éducation environnementale. Et cette photo montre le siège de l'ONG qui est situé au sein de l'université Félix Houphouët-Boigny dans le jardin botanique de cette institution. Next slide. Alors, comme but que s'est donné l'ONG SOS Forêt, c'est de lutter contre toute forme de dégradation de notre environnement, plus particulièrement des forêts et de l'ensemble de leurs ressources en vue d'une gestion rationnelle de nos écosystèmes, mais aussi pour un développement humain durable en Côte d'Ivoire. Et certains objectifs ont été fixés, c'est-à-dire freiner la dégradation du patrimoine forestier ivoirien, réhabiliter les écosystèmes forestiers, constituer une banque de données sur les forêts, mais aussi proposer des stratégies novatrices de gestion durable des ressources forestières. Next slide. Alors, au plan national, il faut noter qu'il y a eu des activités. Donc, la première activité que nous allons présenter, c'est au niveau de la conservation de la biodiversité. Dans le parc national d'Azaï, qui est l'un des IBA, sur les 14 IBA que compte la Côte d'Ivoire. Il faut dire que ce projet qui a été financé par BirdLife International, au passage que je remercie pour son soutien à l'ONG SOS Forêt, ce projet qui a débuté en 2008 et qui a pris fin en 2009 a eu comme axe d'intervention l'inventaire de la biodiversité, la protection des oiseaux migrateurs, la sensibilisation des communautés locales pour la protection des sites et des oiseaux migrateurs. Et il faut dire que ça a permis à maintenir la cadence au niveau de la protection de la biodiversité, en particulier au niveau des oiseaux migrateurs, même si beaucoup reste à faire. Comme autre activité, nous avons le processus FLEG, qui est un processus qui est en cours, mais en Côte d'Ivoire, qui a eu lieu, qui s'est tenu de 2014 à 2017. Donc, ce processus qui a consisté à renforcer les capacités de la société civile pour participer aux négociations entre la Côte d'Ivoire et l'Union européenne. Et cela a été financé par l'Union européenne. On a aussi le projet Arcadia, financé par Arcadia et BirdLife International, qui a pris fin cette année et qui a eu pour axe d'intervention le renforcement organisationnel dont l'ONG a bénéficié, qui a mis en place certaines structures de l'ONG, et aussi pour son plan stratégique aussi, grâce à ce projet. Il faut dire aussi que cela a permis aussi à mener des actions comme la conservation de la biodiversité, l'autonomisation des communautés locales, le renforcement des capacités organisationnelles des side sport groups, mais aussi le suivi des IBS. Next slide. Next slide. Ok, donc ici nous avons nous avons aussi le projet le projet de la protection des mangroves pour l'utilisation de rayons solaires pour fabriquer le sel à la place du bois énergie. Et les populations utilisaient les bois issus du mangrove pour pouvoir produire du sel. Donc l'avènement de ce projet a permis à la protection des mangroves en utilisant le soleil, qui est une énergie renouvelable, pour fabriquer le sel en lieu et place du bois provenant des mangroves. Et aussi, il y a certaines activités comme l'autonomisation des communautés rurales par la production durable du sel marin. Donc ces populations peuvent produire du sel en utilisant le soleil et non pas le bois provenant des mangroves. Et il faut dire que ce projet qui a eu lieu en 2016 et qui a pris fin en 2017 a été financé par l'ambassade du Canada en Côte d'Ivoire et aussi par SOS Forêt. Et parallèlement aussi, on a eu un autre projet qui s'agit de la lutte contre le changement climatique. Et dans ce projet, il s'est agi de créer des forêts communautaires pour produire du bois énergie. Parce que les villages qui sont en bordure des mangroves sont des pêcheurs, la majorité de ces populations sont des pêcheurs. Et donc les dames utilisaient du bois provenant des mangroves pour pouvoir fumer le poisson. Donc ce projet d'abord a consisté à mettre en place des forêts communautaires à partir des essences de bois à croissance rapide comme l'acacia, dont les dames pouvaient utiliser pour pouvoir fumer le poisson, mais aussi pour la construction de foyers améliorés pour réduire la consommation du bois de feu. Mais aussi, il faut dire que la communauté a été sensibilisée sur la gestion durable des ressources forestières. Donc, au titre des activités au plan national, il faut noter que concernant l'organisation, chaque année, il y a l'organisation de Journée mondiale des oiseaux migrateurs. Et à cette occasion, SOS Forêt, depuis 2015, organise en Côte d'Ivoire cette activité-là pour pouvoir montrer la protection des oiseaux migrateurs, sensibiliser les populations pour la protection des aibiers, et aussi sensibiliser les communautés sur la gestion durable des ressources forestières. Next slide. Alors, donc, ces images montrent une campagne de sensibilisation. Ici, on a un briefing avec les communautés locales de conservation. On a aussi des images d'inventaire des oiseaux. On a aussi l'inventaire des espèces végétales, les mangroves que vous avez à droite en bas. Next slide. Alors, au plan régional, il faut dire aussi que l'ONG a mené certaines des actions dont nous avons tenu à présenter quelques actions. Le projet AfriBirds, qui a lieu entre la Côte d'Ivoire et le Nigeria, financé par NABU et BirdLife International. Et là, comme as d'intervention, il s'agit de faire l'inventaire des oiseaux, de faire le suivi, surtout des oiseaux migrateurs, mais aussi de la conservation de la biodiversité. Il y a eu aussi le projet sur l'application et la gouvernance pour la gestion durable de la forêt, qui a pris en compte la Côte d'Ivoire, le Ghana, le Congo, RDC et le Cameroun. Donc ce projet a été financé par l'Union européenne et qui a permis au renforcement des capacités des parties prenantes pour une meilleure participation au mécanisme APV, FLET, qui ici sont des accords de partenariat volontaire concernant les négociations entre l'Union européenne et les pays africains. Mais aussi, on a aussi l'axe d'intervention comme le gouvernement, la gouvernance des forestiers. Okay. Il y a aussi la conservation de la biodiversité dans la zone frontalière entre le Ghana et la Côte d'Ivoire. Donc, projet appelé Corridor Ghana-Côte d'Ivoire, qui a été financé par la FAO et Conservation Alliance. Voilà, comme as d'intervention, il s'agit de développer une zone de conservation transfrontalière connectant les réserves forestières et les aires protégées entre la Côte d'Ivoire et le Ghana. Alors, ce corridor-là a permis à certaines espèces comme les éléphants et autres pour pouvoir migrer dans les deux sens sans toutefois détruire les plantations des populations et aussi des habitats de certains riverains. La population aussi a été sensibilisée, donc la sensibilisation des communautés rurales à la préservation de la biodiversité et aux bonnes pratiques agricoles. Il faut dire que ce projet s'est tenu de 2015 à 2017. Next slide. Donc ici, voici quelques images de ces activités concernant ce projet. Donc le briefing des groupes de SG. Déjà, on a des résultats à travers l'image qui parle. Lutter contre les espèces végétales envahissantes, sensibiliser les populations à la protection des écosystèmes critiques ou encore qui regardent des espèces menacées. Alors, concernant la deuxième orientation, c'est-à-dire conserver les espèces endémiques et les espèces menacées, donc c'est d'accentuer le plaidoyer pour la conservation des espèces endémiques et des espèces rares et menacées, promouvoir la création et la protection de couloirs écologiques. Et il faut dire que ce projet a été déjà réalisé à travers le projet Corridor Ghana-Côte d'Ivoire. Voilà. Et former des agents de structures exerçant dans le domaine de la conservation sur les techniques d'inventaire avifaune. Contribuer à l'inventaire des espèces endémiques et des espèces menacées. Bon, ceci a commencé, mais il continue. Produire des études ou conseils sur l'état de la conservation des espèces endémiques et des espèces menacées, mais contribuer à travers la recherche scientifique et une meilleure connaissance de la biodiversité biologique, de la diversité biologique ivoirienne. Next slide. Concernant le pilier 2, c'est-à-dire la lutte contre le changement climatique, nous avons adopté 3 orientations. Donc la première orientation, c'est de promouvoir la gestion durable des forêts, de participer activement aux réformes juridiques initiées dans le cadre du secteur forestier. Et donc, cela, il faut dire aussi que beaucoup de choses ont été faites, d'où l'adoption par l'État ivoirien du Code forestier le mois dernier en Conseil des ministres et du gouvernement. L'ONG aussi a participé activement au mécanisme APV FLEG et RED+. Donc ça, ce sont des objectifs qui sont déjà atteints à travers les activités déjà réalisées. Au niveau de l'orientation 2, c'est-à-dire promouvoir la reforestation en zone rurale et périurbaine et initier des cadres de collaboration avec des structures ou entités privées astreintes à l'obligation agricole durable, c'est-à-dire rechercher des cadres de collaboration avec les entreprises agro-industrielles, des coopératives, des accompagnements de ces structures vers une mutation des pratiques agricole vers une agroforesterie durable. Il faut dire aussi des actions sont menées. Actuellement, nous avons des pourparlers, des négociations en cours avec une grande structure de la place pour pouvoir mettre en place un cadre de collaboration. Next slide. Alors, concernant le pilier 3, c'est-à-dire la promotion de l'éducation environnementale et l'autonomisation des communautés rurales,
Go back a bit.
non?
Back a bit.
OK. Alors, donc ici, nous avons 3 orientations. Donc, renforcer les capacités des communautés pour promouvoir leur participation aux activités de conservation de la biodiversité, y compris l'écotourisme. Donc, c'est-à-dire promouvoir l'installation des communautés de conservation locaux, des site sport groups, et assurer leur dynamisme. Mais aussi faire une liste de communautés locaux de conservation actifs. Concernant l'orientation 2, initier des activités génératrices de revenus au profit des communautés rurales. Donc l'ONG a pour objectif d'initier des activités génératrices de revenus au profit des populations environnantes, des zones de conservation. Mais aussi, concernant l'orientation 3, promouvoir l'éducation environnementale, donc redynamiser et ou installer des clubs environnement en lien avec les associations d'élèves et étudiants dans le district d'Abidjan. Donc des actions ont été déjà menées et d'autres sont à venir. Il y a 2 activités dans ce sens-là. Next slide. Alors, nous pouvons dire que l'importance de la biodiversité est fonction des préoccupations de l'homme, comme depuis des ressources naturelles n'apparaît que par rapport à leurs besoins et toute action de développement et ou de conservation sans tenir compte tant pour nous d'actualiser et de redynamiser les site sport groups et de renforcer leurs capacités organisationnelles, renforcer les capacités et les réseaux de base pour la conservation de la nature par le biais d'ateliers de sensibilisation et de formation pour le suivi des IBS. Mais aussi initier des activités génératrices de revenus au profit des communautés rurales, comme l'a mentionné depuis le matin par le représentant de l'UNESCO. Mais aussi, nous comptons suivre les IBA qui sont de plus en plus menacés. Alors, nous disons que le travail à mener est grand, mais les ONG manquent de ressources pour pouvoir amener à bien cette grande mission. Alors, nous lançons un appel aux institutions financières à financer de plus en plus les activités des ONG et à mettre en place des mécanismes qui vont permettre aux ONG de mener à bien ces activités-là pour lutter contre la perte de la biodiversité. C'est vrai, l'Afrique doit se développer, mais en tenant compte de la génération future, d'où nous lançons cet appel. Mesdames et messieurs, SOS Forêt vous remercie de votre aimable attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We now go to Ghana. Okay, merci beaucoup. Maintenant, c'est le tour de Ghana.
Looking into the future. So the Ghana Wildlife Society is a foremost NGO in Ghana. We have been at the forefront of promoting conservation in Ghana. and we have also been very relevant to the policy-making process in the country. So the society, as I mentioned earlier, has gone through a lot of changes. And our formation dates back to the period when the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds implemented a project called the Save the Seashore to the Ghana Wildlife Society. So the Ghana Wildlife Society is simply governed by a council, which is the highest decision-making body, a government secretariat, which is headed by the executive director, and we have under the executive director, there are a number of programs and projects. Our vision, our mission is to conserve wildlife in all its forms for a better environment for all segments of society. Yes, so to give you a gist about the programs we are running, actually the programs we run depends on the availability of funding. So far as funding can support us, are running. First one, we have research and conservation science, which is the largest program of the society. Under the research and conservation science, we do a lot of research on Palearctic migrants, do a couple of consultancies for the private sector and individuals as well. Then we also have a program I call Business and Biodiversity. So this involves solely private sector engagement. So there are quite a number of corporate entities that we are engaging, which we are supporting to meet their corporate sustainability commitments. You know, in a week, in an era where you have a lot of pressure on businesses and corporate entities to demonstrate sustainability along their supply chains. And then we also have the Marine and Coastal program, which is a recent one. So we just got funding to do a research, a small grant to conduct a research on bycatch on marine mammals, not for birds this time. Next. Yeah, so we have other programs which run at the back of the three key programs I have earlier described. Conservation education involves schools in both the second cycle and first cycle institutions and universities and basic schools as well. And we also have a policy and advocacy program where we explore ways by which we can engage decision makers to have influence on the policy making process or key decisions taken by government which affects biodiversity or nature. And we also have a marketing, communication and membership scheme. This has different, we have adopted different models. We have a situation where corporate members enroll as members, where they adopt, you see that species fence in the photo. So corporate entities purchase spaces on these boards and they adopt particular species which are of interest to them, but they are all endangered or critically endangered or threatened species. Throw a bit of light on conservation education. I mentioned that we engage schools. So some of the ways by which we engage the youth are through excursions, through celebration of the notable events on the global calendar. In terms of notable days, we take advantage to engage the youth and the general public on the values of conservation. It could be on wetlands, wildlife, threatened species such as the vultures. And then we also engage basic schools in drama, art competitions. They do a lot of painting, which attracts the public. So we are able to raise into the, as John was presenting, the biodiversity and the youth. So I would expect that perhaps tomorrow we can explore how we can tap into those publications. Okay, so these are all photos. We also engage high schools in bird walks. So through that, they are able to acquire the skills and the capacity to identify birds and to get themselves familiarized with the protocols for conducting bird count walks. Our bird walks usually happen on the last day of the month, last Saturday of every month. So we take advantage of those days to engage the public, those who take very keen interest in exploring nature or learning more about nature and learning more. Yes, so besides engagement of schools and the public, we also foster very close collaborations with the traditional authorities and people at the community level, because actual conservation, you and I know, happen at the grassroots. So the photos you see is a current collaboration we are having with the Ghana Cement Company through BirdLife. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, long-standing relationship with the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds through our work on the Palearctic land migrants. So it's basically on the wood warblers. So our recent research was on about 8 species of birds, a monitoring scheme for these birds. So the purpose for this research on the wood warblers is to investigate, to establish the key habitat features, the management practices, the social factors that influence the habitats or populations of these Palearctic migrants. So you can see we conduct pockets of surveys for vultures. So in this case, we did a survey of the whiteback vulture in the Moli National Park, just to establish a baseline for populations for subsequent monitoring. Yep. Yeah, so you can see the 2 guys sitting there. Okay, next. Yeah, so we also have long-term monitoring schemes for key threatened species. The first one is on the Picatatis gymnocephalus. You know, Picatatis was in Ghana, it was believed to have gone extinct in Ghana. But in the 80s, through the intervention of GWS, we were able to identify colonies close to the Bosomkese Forest Reserve. So that started this whole idea of ensuring that we do extended search to locate new colonies. So that work has been ongoing since those colonies were discovered. And we are having support from the A.G. Leventis Foundation to do this work. We also have a dedicated monitoring scheme for marine turtles. So our work is solely based on the eastern coast of Ghana and the western coast as well. So ENI Ghana is supporting us to do this work. On the eastern coast, we have also worked closely with the China Harbour Engineering Company Limited, which is responsible for the construction of the ports, responsible for the port expansion project at Tema in Ghana. And through the support of ENI Ghana, we are also monitoring hooded vultures. We are doing roost counts and in the western region, close to where ENI Ghana is doing their oil exploration activities. Next. Okay, so I mentioned about our new marine program, which is intended to monitor shorebirds and to also do some work on marine mammal and sea turtle, marine mammal bycatch. Next. Okay, so these are few companies that we are currently engaging. So as I mentioned earlier, we engage corporate entities through membership. So at the moment, those who have Moving Peak is a hotel, Multi-Choice, Gassem is also currently working with us. Newmont has also started as well. Next. Yeah, so these are few existing joint projects we have with the private sector. So ENI is working offshore Cape 3 Points in Ghana, and we are the official contractors or partners responsible for monitoring the marine mammals as the dolphins and porpoises offshore. So we do monthly monitoring of these species and do sightings, record those sightings, and analyze the trend. So the assumption is that the oil exploration activities may impact the movement and the abundance of these species offshore. We are also working with Gassem. Gassem is operating a quarry. They are operating quarries. They have subcontractors who are mining limestone in certain locations in the eastern region of Ghana. So we are closely helping Gassem to ensure that their quarries are not devoid of biodiversity. All their reclamation plans and the rehabilitation plans. I mean, we get involved and help them to explore ways by which they can incorporate biodiversity. We've also had the opportunity to work with the China Harbour Engineering Company Limited. The work we did is similar to that of ENI, so I will not talk further on that. And we have also worked with GIZ. Okay. Yeah, GIZ is implemented a project in the Volta Basin where they wanted to know how they can control bird pests on their rice farms. So GWS did a baseline survey, and we signed an MOU, so we are still engaging them on how we can use biology to scare away the bird pests by training raptors and other. There are so many ideas have come up. And last but not the least, we are also currently, so they also have large tracts of ylang plantations. So we are also helping them to identify areas of high conservation value, those that are forest remnants, which we are proposing, we put in conservation measures to conserve those patches. So the partnership is going very well. Okay, next. Next. Yes, so the last one, policy and advocacy. So we are engaging governments on many fronts at the moment. So in terms of biodiversity mainstreaming or ecosystem services mainstreaming, we we serve on the National Maps Committee, and we have used that platform to initiate so many things. So we have been able to develop a guideline which government has bought into, and it has been adopted but yet to be published. So we took a lead in that. We have developed guidelines to guide local planning authorities on how to mainstream the man and biosphere concept and ecosystem services in their development plans. So right from the local level to the national level. And we recently launched our documents, which this document collates, it analyzed over 130 policies and laws that relate to protected areas, agriculture, and environmental assessment. So we came up with very interesting findings, which we think that government and other civil society institutions it can trigger so many things. It could set the stage for further work in terms of as Wabik indicated, in terms of policy and legal gap analysis. This could be something they can consider in their in furthering their work. We also work on IBAs in danger. We have been part of the force that are kicking against the mining of bauxite in the Atiwa Rainforest Reserve, which is one of the fragile ecosystems we have in Ghana. Next. Yes, these are just news feeds on some of the things we are doing, there are several of them, but these are a few ones I could capture yesterday. Next. Okay, so my time is up, but looking into the future, I've outlined some of the things that we are interested to do. Long-term funding for conservation programs, we are currently exploring ways of doing that, and the private sector is on our cards. In terms of advocacy, we hope to become the most influential in the country. We also want to play a key role in establishing a KBA partnership in Ghana. I think Nigeria has started the process, so we are willing to learn from some of our bird life partners who have taken the lead. Then Common Bird Monitoring Scheme, we're also interested in that. I think Tandy mentioned it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Your microphone, please.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I think time is fast spent. This is SCNL, the Society for the Conservation of Nature of Liberia. This organization was established in 1986 as the oldest biodiversity conservation organization in Liberia. And as present, the organization was really established to promote the wise use of natural resources and to ensure that biodiversity is effectively managed and wisely used. SCNI is the official BirdLife partner in Liberia. And SCNI is the lead biodiversity conservation organization in Liberia, the national lead. If you also check our vision, is biodiversity is effectively managed and wisely used. That's what we stand for. As a model of BirdLife, we are a membership-based organization, and presently we have 1,200 plus members, with 35% being female, 14 for gender equity in the process. And this membership together is referred to as the General Assembly, which meets after every 3 years to discuss pertinent issue about the institution. Presently, the Secretariat has 51 staff, but the core staff is only 11. All of the rest, they are in the field and they are project staffs. SNI has been part of 3 transboundary project implementation in the region presently.
If you can recall, the Trans-Boundary Peace Park project for Sierra Leone and Liberia first, that brought about the Gola Forest National Park establishment. And SCNL was the lead in that process. SCNL worked with the government of Liberia, the government of Sierra Leone, and her partner CSSL in Sierra Leone. Today, we were able to establish 81,000 hectares of forest as the Gola Forest National Park in Liberia, and presently working on the greater Gola landscape that falls between Liberia and Sierra Leone. If you look at our geographical location, especially within Liberia, we have our office in Monrovia, but all of our work is outside of Monrovia. You'll see Bapolu and Grand Cape Mount that hold the Gola Forest National Park, Grand Bassa, Sano that hold the Sapo National Park, including locations where you'll find out of the 9 RBAs and KBAs, because under the BirdLife program, we are to monitor these KBAs and RBAs. Next. If you look at our strategic objectives, we say increase institutional capacity for effective management of biodiversity. SCNL developed into a strong, viable organization capable of influencing conservation activities and policies in Liberia. And that's why we are strongly working towards. If you see most of the policy documents that have come out of Liberia with regards biodiversity of forests or conservation, SCNL play lead role, and we still stand in that capacity. We also have a strong community structure in providing basic information on the threats, the use of other resources, and biodiversity. We work strongly with local communities. We know conservation cannot succeed if you don't draw in the local communities. So in all of our work that we do, seeking funding to manage these protected areas, these conservation areas, and working as a biodiversity conservation organization, we think it's important to get funding so that we carry on these activities. Continuation of that, you will say increase advocacy for creation of additional protected areas. As you may be aware, Liberia holds the highest remaining forest in the Upper Guinea forest, with almost 41% in the Upper Guinea forest. As such, we need to open up and be able to work with local communities, or else it's more, but it will be fast going because the management structure will not be built and people wouldn't understand the process. As such, we also go ahead to increase alternative level opportunities for communities around protected area and conservation areas. We reinforce public awareness on social, economic, environmental, and artistic and cultural values of natural resources. Next. Our interventions, we said protected area, management, scientific research. In all of the protected area now in Liberia, whether directly managed by SCNL or not, we are strongly involved with scientific research in all of these areas. And then we go to community forest establishment. As you may be aware, Liberia subscribed to the 3 C's model, that is conservation, community, and commercial. So since we are biodiversity conservation organization, we work with 2 of the C's strongly, that is conservation and community. So we work with Conservation International and other partners coming up with conservation agreement model and engaging local communities in places that are not part of the 9 RBAs or protected areas or proposed protected areas, but communities that have their own forests, that have places that can be protected. We work with them to come with conservation agreement that is not bounded by law, but where we work with the local communities to understand that there's a need to protect these areas, and then we come up with a simple MOU. We will do this and you will do that, and this model have worked well in Liberia, but it needs funding to always keep the communities up, because they are learning how to even sustainably manage some of these areas, because we found little funding to do this work within a year, and after a year we pull out. But we see that these structures are still there and they are working with them very efficiently. Next. As I said, our core programs, you see science and conservation, policy and advocacy, site support group and nature club establishment and membership bid. At last, you find local engagement and empowerment program. As I said from the beginning, we are the official BirdLife partner in Liberia, and we think all the BirdLife partners around the table is how you can work to bring your own activity or your strategy to align it with the BirdLife strategy. So as such, we try as much as working with our local communities to put ourselves in line with the BirdLife programs. Next. We have our program and finance management, as we all know. If you want to deal with that, they are the people who take over everything, they oversee programs, they oversee the finances, and the mobilize funds so that we are able to run this activity, because SCNL is a project-driven institution. At this point, once you get project, you are able to do more. If there's no funding to get project, you cannot go further with these things. And if you see some of our funding and institutional support projects, long-term co-funding from BirdLife and RSPB since 2015. We got broad project funding based from multiple donors. As you see there, the Rainforest Trust, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, the BirdLife International, Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, USAID Predate, and WABIC, EU Golama, IUCN Netherlands, working with us in the SAPO area, and the Liberia forest sector, which come from the funding from Norway. Norway is funding Liberia to set up her rare plus mechanism, provided $150 million to the government of Liberia. So many portion of this is spread out to institutions that will want to do key activities within the landscapes. And since SCNL being the lead in biodiversity conservation, especially research, we are taking the initiative to tap into this and seek some of the funding. With help from our SPB, helping us to put some of these programs together, our projects in BirdLife. SCNL large grant to date is the EU project that runs now, coming to an end, that is 2.2 million, the Golama project. Next. The ones in red, there we have almost like offices now, but if you see the ones in green, these are the 9 RBAs or KBAs within Liberia, and we try to work. There are other partners working most of the area, and towards the FOIA side, we are working also in the FOIA area to establish FOIA as a protected area. If you look coming down, one of the heritage areas in Liberia. So following up on the coastline, you see almost 4 of the RBAs land, and one of them is the rubber spot, which is the flyway zone for Liberia. So as Tandy was presenting, the yellow line that was coming, it dropped into Liberia right around the rubber spot, and we are monthly or yearly involved with the water break count, for which presently we are on now doing. Next. Our key partners and donors, as you can see around, are named very few to you, but these are the ones that have been helping us to keep us moving, even though government entities are there. You will see Forestry Development Authority and Environmental Protection. They are regulating entities within the country, but all of the partners around there have been very strong with us, helping us to reach where we are, and we hope we can still seek more funding for those in the house, FAO, UNESCO, World Bank, so that I think we can also put them on the map and see how best we can continue making biodiversity to stay in Liberia. Next. Thank you very much.
Presentation. So questions, comments?
You call, like we say in Ghana, well done to all the presenters. My question goes specifically to Eric. I mean, it's very interesting to learn that he's doing a lot with the private sector. And as we all know, in the area of environment, it's very difficult really working with the private sector. So I think they've done very well, and I would want to know how they went about it and what really motivates the private sector to engage with them. Thank you.
Trying to find out whether they've been having challenges in terms of bringing or conveying some conservation activities in their countries. If they do, can they share some of the challenges that they faced actually in the past, which they are currently facing in their country? Thank you very much.
Okay, that's a big one. I think
with the oil companies from the oil sector and the construction sector, I think it was driven by the requirements within the World Bank. I mean, according to this their environmental safeguards, I think performance standard 6 of the World Bank, it strictly requires that companies that are operating in critical habitats hire third parties to do their monitoring for them in terms of their marine mammals and sea turtles. So that actually gave us the opportunity. So they came to us. We didn't even go to them. But for some of the companies, a company like Lush, the British cosmetic company, some of the opportunities are worked through our BirdLife partners. So with Lush, it was through BirdLife, introduction by BirdLife, that got us to work with Lush. So these are some of the ways by which we are able to engage the private sector.
can you address
This,
well,
yes, with
one major one?
yes, one major one, I think it was a governance problem. There was some few years ago, the governance structures within the Ghana Wildlife Society was not as strong as we would have expected. But I think in the past few years, attention has been paid to it, so that problem is solved. And we had very high turnover in terms of staffing, which has also been stabilized. Mm-hmm. But the other challenges are, we all know, the funding, difficulty in accessing funds. I don't need to mention.
We'll come around.
More like coordination, looking at the government agency with government giving the will to establishing most of these protected areas and following it up in reality to see that these things are welcome. Because working with the local communities that don't understand it, and once you go there and the government is not following up with you, you face a lot of challenges. But if you work together with the government, those are the things that we find is challenging.
Thank you. One major challenge.
Communautaire, parce que c'était pas facile lorsque nous allions vers les populations pour leur parler de biodiversité, mais avec la sensibilisation, ils ont commencé à s'approprier la chose environnementale. Donc vraiment, nous voulons étendre plus, et surtout pour mettre en place des activités génératrices de revenus. Et lorsque eux-mêmes prennent en charge leurs forêts, nous pensons que beaucoup de choses sont faites. Merci.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's give them another round from Nigeria, Senegal.
I think what we tend to do in most cases is these projects or activities are demanded by the government. So we're not going to come and impose into your space. So if your government, so it's your project basically. So and one thing I've seen, I think I'll remove my World Bank cap, and I've seen that most countries in Africa keep on asking. They are never sustainable. They never have enough. When will we stop asking? So that's the big. So when I say 25 years, that's a long time for you to ask, and you are still asking for money. so there's supposed to be a time that you need to stop asking and start generating income. And so we try and make sure that it's your project, number one. Number two, your communities have to own it. So we do stakeholders. So for instance, you look at the top and look at the bottom. I work in Sierra Leone and Cameroon. I know there are quite a few blips and the Ebola issue and all that. But at some point, I notice in these countries, they are massively rich. Freetown was built by the Chinese. I was there when the Chinese were building the roads in Freetown. They took iron ore. We knew about it. So how can we now leverage on our resources to be sustainable? We have the power. So we want to work with governments that know their ability, they have the ability to actually work with us and push us back. And so quite a few of us in developing partners encourage you to own your projects, take advantage of the policies on ground, and at some point start making money out of it. And quite a few of the countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia have natural resources. We have the RED project in Liberia. How can you start making money out of it? So I think the most important thing is that when the communities start deriving income, that is the way forward to be sustainable. And we also feel bad when we see there's a follow-up project. We feel that we tend not to give you funds again, because the funds are limited and there are other countries are requesting for them. So we feel that how can we encourage? That means either our project is a failure. If we have not, the success factor is that the project has been able to, the government has been able to take over the project and run with it. So sometimes it might be a success, to us it's a failure, because you have not taken the money and run with it. And even worse off when we even give loans, because other UN agencies actually give grants, we give loans. So you pay, your children pay for that money. So that is very painful as an African. So please factor that in as you give projects. So, but we are looking for various ways, and we always work with you to make sure that you own the project and take it over. We expect you to take it over and run with it. So in the other question about synergy and climate change from Dr. Tandy, we do have, luckily you are based in Dakar. The regional observatory is in Dakar. So we do have colleagues in Dakar that we definitely want to work with you. So the regional observatory is in Dakar. We are funding it at this moment. We will be excited. I can give you the contacts of the people in Dakar you can reach out to and be able to factor in the kind of data you can collect. I don't know the details because I'm not working on it now. But also it will be good to actually see a synergy. What kind of data have you collected to be able to see that we're not duplicating efforts and reach a synergy? And there are ways of collaboration. We will be so excited to do that. Because regional observatory is for the whole of the coastline. So all the countries on the coastline, and we're looking forward to getting more data. They were only focused on Senegal, but now we want to expand them to the whole of the West African coastline. So I think for oil spill, and I was listening to Michael's, because in my previous life I used to do lots of work on oil spill. So I actually looked at the cost of the impact of oil spill on the Niger Delta and the cost of oil spill. And I kind of laugh because we know the compensation rates of oil spill are very minute. So if you can't even pay compensation to yourselves, you expect foreign countries to pay to you, they would never. So like you can see a tree, maybe a mango tree is like 10 kobo. The rates are extremely low. And we've not been able to make a case. But also for such a thing to happen, I also support my colleague from UNESCO. It needs to be at the regional level, but also the countries need to also come out and request for it. We are still fighting for the one on slavery. That is kind of, and now we want to go to what happened in America, crossing the ocean. I would say most countries, most governments of the day would not look at it. But saying that, one of the things we also, and I'm also talking to my colleagues here, you have to understand the way the countries work. So different countries work in different ways. And one of the things is that if you want your projects to have traction, you have to work with the government and the people. And so we tend to be apolitical, but you have to understand and also be able to put a monetary value. So those people don't understand our jargon, sorry to say. They don't understand when you're talking about migratory birds, movement, livelihoods, forest and all that. And moreover, they're not the stakeholders. They don't live in the communities. They live in places like Abuja, Freetown, and all that. They live in the cities, so they don't understand what the poor man is going through. So the only way you can actually assist them is to put a monetary value and look at what they will lose as a result of not servicing these ecosystems, which are extremely important to them too. So for instance, if a rich man wants to drink orange, fresh orange, he likes fresh orange, but he doesn't know how it's gotten. But you tell him that whatever he's doing, he doesn't put money, that fresh orange will not be, he will be drinking the one from sugar and all that. He will think you're putting a value to it. So I think I will stop there. Thank you.
Some participants also gave their remarks.
Dr. Tandiwe Chikomo, I work for BirdLife International, and I am the head of the West Africa office, and I'm based in Dakar.
Very pleased to meet you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. How important is this dialogue?
This is a very important workshop, and we would like to sincerely extend our appreciation to the director of Nigeria Conservation Foundation, that is the BirdLife partner here in Nigeria. This workshop has actually brought a number of our BirdLife partners in West Africa, and here we also had an opportunity to meet with bilateral other organizations as well, such as the World Bank, the food and agricultural organizations and others. So that has really been an opportunity for us to be able to share our experiences as well as challenges in West Africa, with the hope that we can be able to collaborate to be able to implement our conservation strategies.
Fantastic delivery there. So very quickly, do you think human beings have any responsibility in this sector?
Absolutely. Human beings, if there is any primary role that we need to really focus on, is really to make sure that we conserve our biodiversity, not only for ourselves, but for all the children in the future.
Okay, rising from this meeting, what would you like to see change about Africa as regards the biodiversity talk and everything?
What I would like to see out of this is that we could actually engage more. We could actually collaborate more. We don't need to duplicate efforts. There are opportunities to be able to use the minimum resources that we have for the better of the resources, as well as the betterment of our communities.
Going forward, in 10 years' time, let's say 5 to be modest, in 5 years' time, what would you like to see structures on ground through these collaborative efforts?
Yes, I hope that we will be able to put in place permanent forums where we can actually be able to meet at a specific given time to be able to continue the dialogue, because this is not a one-off event, because as you can imagine, the challenges to biodiversity conservation are huge and they cannot be done by any one organization. We need to continue the collaboration. So we do hope that going beyond this meeting, we can actually be able to continue engaging, and that our BirdLife partners that are represented in the various countries in West Africa can actually be able to be in a position to be able to put on the table the key issues of concern to the governments, to the private sector, and any other stakeholders.
My name is Dr. Mutari Aminu Kanu. I'm Director General of the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, NCF, based in Lagos. You know, all of us gathered here today are people who are very passionate and concerned about the environment. So the key thing about the environment is that you have to get all the relevant stakeholders together, because no one group can really solve the problem of the environment. We need the government to make the right policies, to enforce legislation, to implement regulations. We need the private sector to be able to behave in an environmentally appropriate way. And we need NGOs to be able to root us in the communities and get us to work. And also, we cannot do this just in one country, because the environment knows no borders. So if we look after our environment here in Nigeria and our neighbors in Cameroon or Niger or Benin Republic don't, then it's like we are not doing anything. It's going to come back and bite us. So we need people from here, and that's why this meeting is a gathering of people from about 7 countries, from UN agencies, other development partners, ECOWAS, which is the intergovernmental organization, and then NGOs, the leading NGOs from each of these 7 countries.
Okay, maybe to end this session, I'd like to ask you, what are those challenges, and have you been able to provide solutions during this dialogue, at this time?
So we all agree that some of the key and major challenges to the environment, especially to wildlife, biodiversity, forests, and so on, and climate change in our region of West Africa are to do with the rapid changes that are happening to the habitat. We are destroying our habitats because of our increase in population. We are slashing and burning forests in order to grow more crops and provide more food. We are cutting trees in order to get firewood, and we are polluting the environment, both the water, the air, and the land. And because of this, those are really things that we need to address specifically. Now, we've looked at solutions individually from all across the countries, from our different respective organizations. What we want to do tomorrow, beginning from tomorrow, is to look at collective solutions. So that not just each of us individually doing our things in our countries, but develop a framework where all of us would collectively be doing things together. And with numbers comes strength. And we are hoping that that kind of solution is more effective than each one working in their own individual corners.
Okay, little wonder why the theme is conservation, collaboration beyond national boundaries.
Yes, absolutely. That's the main reason why it has to be beyond just your country, because the air knows no border, the water knows no border, birds know no border, and wildlife cross between borders. They don't have passports, and they are not citizens of one country or the other. So we have to do it together beyond borders.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
After all said and done, it is expected that this maiden workshop will provide an opportunity for sub-regional or multi-country cooperation amongst civil society organizations, the economic community of West African states, and development partners to ensure that humans will live in harmony with nature.